Hello, YouTube. My name is Alan, and it's that time once again. Let's talk metal. I'm going to talk about something pretty cool tonight. There was something that happened right at the end of July that was kind of a big deal for new wave of British heavy metal vinyl collectors. A big collection was put up for sale on eBay, and it caused a bit of a stir in the collecting community. I got emails from some old collecting friends I hadn't heard from for a while who kind of started coming out of the woodwork, wanting to check out what some of these things were going to bid and sell for. And a lot of folks, were hoping to bid on a few things that they still hadn't added to their collection. So what I'm going to do tonight in a couple minutes is share my screen and go through some of the closed auction listings and just point out some interesting things from the set of auctions. Now, the collection contained almost 1,000 records. Not all of it was new wave of British heavy metal. Nevertheless, I tracked well over 100 items that I was interested in, just not trying to bid on all of them, of course, just to see what they would bring. I'm not going to go through each and every individual listing. I actually tried that as kind of a test run, and even just going through them kind of rapid fire format, it was going to take like an hour and a half to do it. And I think that may be a little too long for a video on this topic. So I'm going to scroll through them, and I'll point out some of the main things as we go along. Before we start looking at some of the listings, a couple of general things to keep in mind. Even if you're not that interested in these particular records, I'm hoping this video also can function as kind of a set of guideposts to thinking about collecting and looking up prices for heavy metal records online. It's something that, if you're going to try to get any older or rarer CDs or vinyl, it's going to happen from time to time. You find something and you're wondering, how much is this worth? Is this a good price for it? Is that too much? And you start poking around online. A lot of people will just look at things like Discogs, and they'll see that, oh, once upon a time it sold for $500. I guess it's $500. Or they'll see, a listing on a site like PopPsych that says, oh, well, here this one time it sold for $100. I guess this is a $100 record. There's a lot more things that you need to look at than just the price that is shown on Discogs or PopPsych or a closed eBay auction. And I'll point out some examples as we go tonight, but just even things like condition are a big deal, and sometimes people forget to check that. There are some things that made this particular set of auctions interesting. First, it is the first time in a while, to my knowledge, that a large new wave of British heavy metal collection has been offered for sale on eBay. So I think a lot of people were pretty excited for that. Second, the seller was in the United States, not in the United Kingdom or Europe. Third, the seller was offering free shipping, so you didn't have to figure out how much the shipping and handling costs were going to be. You could just bid exactly what you wanted to pay for the record. And fourth, the seller had some restrictions on international bidders. They weren't doing much international shipping, and that kind of reduces the competition for U.S. bidders and collectors to get a little more excited and think, okay, maybe I've got a little better shot than usual to win this auction. So those alone are important things to keep in mind. The person running the auction, I'm almost certain, was not the person who had collected these records over time. I don't know if they inherited the collection, if they bought the entire collection from someone else and now they're selling it one record at a time. Whatever, doesn't really matter. There's a lot of pretty interesting stuff. So I think that covers most of the disclaimers. The only other thing I want to say here is that whatever I say, these are kind of my knee-jerk reactions based on my experience collecting this stuff. I tracked eBay auctions for new wave of British heavy metal vinyl very closely for over 10 years in the early 2000s. I have not kept tabs on it nearly as closely over the last 5 to 10 years. Just had other stuff going on in my life. So there is that. Some of the things I comment on, I may be way off on. If you disagree with my assessment on some of these auctions, by all means, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think of them. And I guess the last big thing to really stress here, when you see an item sell like this, a lot of people, again, kind of start thinking, oh, that's what the record is worth. Not necessarily. That is just the price the record sold for on this particular day. To really get an idea for what something is worth, in kind of like a price guide sense, you'd have to look at a lot of sales records to have a large enough sample size. It's like, okay, if we see 20 copies of this records and they all sell for about $50, then you start to feel confident it's worth $50. But if this is the first time you've seen the record sell in 3 years and it brought $50, what is that really telling you? It just tells you that today somebody paid $50 for it. Maybe on other times it would go up or down. You also have to keep in mind that some records can go up or down over time, and we'll see a couple of examples of that as I run through these two. Without further ado, let me switch gears here and share screen. This should work. Click another button. All right, and now you should be able to see, these are just the completed auctions on my eBay page. I'm pretty sure there's no personal information up here anywhere, so nothing interesting to see. Again, I'm going to skim through these pretty quick and point out just some of the more interesting items, not necessarily all the high dollar ones, just pointing out some patterns. If you're interested in looking at them, item by item, you can certainly pause the video and look more closely as we go. They had a few demo cassettes, and right off the bat, this Satan Into the Fire demo cassette ended up selling for $1,000. Great googly moogly. If you're paying $1,000 for a cassette tape, you got to really want that cassette tape. Now, I have never messed with demo cassettes. I don't like the cassette format. The bottom line is you're buying a 42-year-old cassette tape here. Who in the world knows if it's going to play any good? I mean, cassette tapes are a format that by their very nature degrade over time, even if you're not doing anything to them. So yeah, that's pretty amazing to see a demo tape sell that high. Satan's a very popular and collectible band, as we'll see in a little while. But a couple other tapes sold for a pretty good price here too. Let's see, as we go through here, this Renegade 12-inch EP. It's on the White Witch label. That's a very collectible label for new wave of British heavy metal. Not many things came out on that label. This strikes me as a pretty reasonable price. I personally have never been crazy about the record, but whatever. You're going to see a lot of records like this one, this Mother's Pride 12-inch compilation EP. A lot of these things will bring like in the $25 to $35 range these days. They're not necessarily that rare, but folks kind of like them. It's a chance to hear several different bands and sometimes with unique tracks. All right, here's one of their, or a couple of their big hitters. They had the White Border Merciful Fate 12-inch Nuns Have No Fun EP. This did have the lyric insert with it, and it brought almost $500. I've never seen this record sell for this much. I'm not surprised that it's gone up. We all know that vinyl prices have definitely spiked in the past few years. That's still a very hefty price to pay for that record, in my opinion. But again, it's Merciful Fate. It's a very collectible piece. It's in pretty nice condition here. So somebody wanted it pretty bad, I think, for that price, but there you go. Another example, here we have Venom's Black Metal LP. Now, this one's in nice shape. It has the poster and the lyric insert. You can see them both there in the picture. Nevertheless, $650, wow, for that price, I would expect to be getting it on a colored vinyl variant, not just the black vinyl variant. So Venom, of course, is highly collectible. Fans of new wave of British heavy metal, thrash, death, and black metal all want this record. So there's a ton of competition for these old original copies, especially when they have the inserts with them. I would not have guessed it went this high. If you had asked me what it was going to sell for, I'd have thought, yeah, it might, push the $300 mark. But obviously it did much, much better than that. That's a very high price for that record, in my opinion. All right. Now, here we've got a compilation on the Guardian Records label. It's a very distinct orange label with kind of like an Odin warrior-looking guy drawn on the label. It's very collectible for new wave of British heavy metal fans. And a lot of the items on Guardian are at least semi-rare to very rare. There's not many of them that are easy to come by, so they tend to sell for a lot. The Roxcalibur comp has a couple of early Satan tracks on it before Brian Ross was in the band. $100 isn't outrageous for a copy, except this copy did have some condition issues. And as such, I'm a little surprised it sold as high as it did. Next one here is kind of the opposite case. This is the Angel Witch Sweet Danger 12-inch EP. And at first glance, $90 is going to look high. For example, if you compare this to Discogs, I think Discogs has the median price for this record at like 23 bucks. And so you look at 90 and you think, good Lord, that seems way, way out of bounds. This is where you've got to pay attention to condition. If you actually go into the details on those Discogs copies that have sold, most of them aren't in great condition. A lot of them don't even have the picture sleeve with them. It's just a record in a plain white sleeve. This one has the original picture sleeve, and it was a very, very clean picture sleeve. These 12-inch EPs were often just in very flimsy paper sleeves. They got damaged very easily. They show wear incredibly easy, and this one has very few signs of wear on it. So it's a very, very clean copy, and as such, I'm really not surprised this one, got up in the 75 to 100 range. I've seen a couple of copies get this high before. Having a really clean picture sleeve here is why this copy, at first glance, looks like it's that high. But honestly, I don't think that was too bad a price for it, given the condition it was in. All right, let's see. What other things here are worth pointing out? Here's another one of those Guardian compilations. This one brought $72. This one's a little easier to find than the Roxcalibur. Let's see. This is worth pointing out. The Split Beaver LP at $42. At first glance, a lot of people may think that's kind of high for that. You might expect it to be more like a $30 record. At this point, it's gotten very hard to find a lot of these older LPs on ebony or heavy metal. And as such, you just can't get them for 20 to 30 bucks very easily, like you could have 20 years ago. More and more often, I'm seeing these albums in that 35 to 50 range. Earlier this summer, I saw a copy of this same album in very poor condition, and they still wanted like 45 bucks for it. So a cleaner copy here for 42 is probably about the going price these days. Here you've got the Witchfinder General Soviet Invasion 12-inch EP. 66 bucks is about right. This has been like a $50 to $60 record for 30 years now. The price on this has never varied up or down a whole lot. Here you've got the first Venom LP, Welcome to Hell. This does have the insert and the poster with it. $212 strikes me as maybe just a little high, but not that much. If you asked me to give you a figure for this record, I'd say 150 bucks at least. So having it a little higher than that in nice condition here, okay, makes sense. It is interesting to me that Welcome to Hell tends to sell for less than black metal, but the black metal LP, their second LP, it's got the name. Everybody wants it as like the first black metal album from the 1980s, and thus the first black metal album ever. Moving on, this first Cloven Hoof EP, this has been like a $150 record for ages. So that price is not surprising. Old Misfit shirt. Let's see, what other things here? Again, it would take me too long to read off all of these. They had a lot of the Crucifixion vinyl items. This is a killer new wave of British heavy metal band. I've talked about them in several older videos on this channel. It's really interesting to see how expensive these have gotten in the past 20 years. 20 years, you could have bought this Green Eyes 12-inch EP for 20 to 30 bucks. I used to see them listed on eBay semi-regularly, and a lot of times they wouldn't even sell. Now it's like a $150 record on this day. Is that a great price for it? I honestly don't know. I know they've gone up a lot. That may be a bit high, but it's much more in demand than it used to be. This used to be considered, pretty common, not difficult to find record at all. But Crucifixion were a killer band. I think with some of the different anthologies and reissues that have come along, people have caught on to just how great this band was, and now there's more demand for their stuff. So the price has gone up a lot compared to a couple of decades back. Let's see, $77 for the first Demon LP seemed kind of high to me. Yeah, this was not a little private press affair. This was on a bigger label. Uh, it's a pretty cool LP, a little inconsistent. I would not want to pay $77 for it, but maybe copies have dried up and it's gotten that expensive. I'm not sure. Right. These compilations like, the Metal Explosion, Brute Force, Friday Rock Show, these now, yeah, it's hard to touch these things for less than 30, $35. So reasonable prices on this kind of stuff. There's another one for $30, the lead weight. This one's a rarer comp, Scene of the Crime. 150 is not very surprising. This has always been a pretty rare and collectible record. This auction makes no sense to me. Now, here's one I just don't get. The Samurai's first album, Sacred Blade. Pretty cool band, pretty cool album. It's on Ebony, which is always kind of considered a little bit of a second tier label. They had a lot of good stuff, but they were a little bit late to the game. So, they were releasing other stuff more like, maybe 82, 83, 84 time frame. They weren't necessarily there right at the beginning. I know this album has gone up over the years, but $360 seems way, way crazy. And this record shot up real fast when these auctions were running. I do not know why this is so expensive now. If you had asked me to guess a price on this, I would have said 50, maybe $75 if somebody's really wanting it. I would never have guessed that it was going for several $100s. So if anybody can explain to me why that one is so expensive, was it just a one-time fluke? Don't know. This is a good example, though, where you don't just want to run out the door and say, oh, hey, I've got that record. Mine is worth $360 too. Not necessarily. I do not know what caused this record to sell for this price. You'd want to dig into it and figure out. Sometimes you just get two people bidding against each other and they lose all self-control and bid it way higher than they should have. I don't know what to say. The first Holocaust LP is next. Nightcomers, 100 seems kind of high for that, but Holocaust is another band that's become very collectible over the years. Some of their EPs are coming up here. Here's the 12-inch Heavy Metal Mania EP, 81. Higher than it used to be, but probably not that outrageous by today's prices. Red Vinyl, Witchfinder General Death Penalty, 85. That's not unreasonable. The Red Vinyl's always been one of the more expensive variations on that album. So, yeah, 85, I would have guessed 75, so close enough. Some more Holocaust EPs. These are in the $30 range. It's right where you'd expect them to be. Another one of those comps. It's a little more expensive. Really good one. Let's keep scrolling along. This price for the first Iron Maiden LP, I don't have a frame of reference for this. I don't know how much those go for. I don't know all the different minor variations on the pressings for that. Can't really say. The Hawaii EP was one of the few US metal items in the lot, and yeah, about $50, give or take a little bit, is exactly what you'd expect it to be. Thought the White Spirit LP went a bit high. Yes, this has a connection to Iron Maiden. This is Yannick Guerre's pre-Maiden band. But this album has never been the hardest to find, and some people really dig it. Some people find it a little boring. It's a little bit on the slower 70s rock sounding side of new wave of British heavy metal. Seems a little high to me, but if somebody wanted a nice copy, especially if they're collecting the stuff that's peripheral to Iron Maiden, well, there you go. 62, 63 for a nice copy of the first Angel Witch LP, highly collectible band. Here's an example of an odd one. The Weapon Mad Mad World 12-inch EP, cool record. I might have bid on this one myself. I didn't because this one had some condition issues. I'm a little surprised this one got to 41. This was not the cleanest copy, so I didn't bid on it at all. All right, Legend record. Let's skip those. This is a weird comp. It's the first appearance of Merciful Fate on a compilation, but this cover is very odd. They've got it described as a splatter cover, which I'm not familiar with. Every other copy I've ever seen is just like a solid red cover with, the cartoon drawing in the middle of it. If anybody knows what's up with this cover variant, please leave a comment down below. I'd like to know more about it. I've poked around a little bit, but I have not found anything about that particular pressing. Let's see. What else have we got here? Yeah, a lot of stuff. This one surprised me. The Badge 7-inch. Metal Minded, this was just an imprint on the Neat Records label. And they only ever put out 1 or 2 records on that Metal Minded imprint. I have no idea why they created it for just 2 or 3 releases. It's a cool little single. I would never have guessed it would get you. I would have guessed maybe it got to 100, and even that would have been pushing it. But it shot to over $200 very rapidly, which very surprising. I guess it's another one that's just dried up and gotten rarer over time. It is a pretty decent single, but that price was very surprising. Here's one on that Orange Guardian label I mentioned before. Pretty collectible. There's not many Guardian records you get for, much less than $50. Now here's another one on Guardian that went for a heck of a lot more than $50. Schizophrenic. This one has a picture sleeve with it. Kind of a cool one. I like these old black and white monochrome sleeves. These bands were working on a limited budget. A lot of times they didn't have access to somebody with strong artistic ability, but they often found a cool way to get their gimmick across. So, here you've got, the Mr. Hyde kind of looking guy holding the mask of, like a Dr. Jekyll pleasant face, getting across the idea of being schizophrenic. I like that. I think that's kind of clever. $800. Wow. Now, the deal on this one, it has always been a very rare and very collectible record. It's always been hard to find this one. It's on Guardian. It's got the cool picture sleeve. It's got a name that sounds very metal, kind of scary. It's got everything going for it until you hear the music. I've heard this one. I've got the songs on MP3s. And in my opinion, the music on this is atrocious. I mean, it is bad. Now, that's just my opinion. Someone else may hear it and think it's the best thing ever, but I really think it's a very, very poor example of new wave of British heavy metal. It's not a record I would ever put in my own collection. I would not even buy this record cheap unless I knew I could just take it and trade it or flip it to, make some extra money. I would have guessed it went for a few $100s. If you'd asked me, what's it going to sell for? I would have guessed, I don't know, 300, maybe 400. So this is a lot higher than I would have guessed, but it is a rare and collectible Guardian single. It's just a terrible one. Next up, there are a lot of these early singles on the Heavy Metal Records label in this lot too. You can spot most of them pretty easy because the early singles on this label all had these very thin white paper sleeves, usually with like a black and white image, just a little bit of color. There's often sort of like ink bleeding marks on them from the printing process, I would guess. A lot of them also have kind of weird looking faux Japanese characters. I'm not sure if it's actual characters or just kind of weird stuff they put on the side, and a Made in England stamp, which is kind of weird. I think they just did it to make them look exotic. The Split Beaver one doesn't have it. $66 seems high at first. I'll admit I forgot this band even made a single. On the other hand, Heavy Metal is a collectible label, and these early singles on the Heavy Metal label, it's hard to touch any of them for under $40 anymore. So 66 isn't necessarily as crazy as it sounds. To those of us who have been doing this for a long time, this is the kind of thing you used to see on mail order lists, and it would have been like 15 or $20 at most. So our knee-jerk reaction sometimes is, what the hell, that's too much. But, it's been, 30 years almost since people were doing mail order lists for these things. Those copies have long since dried up. All right. Let's see. Now, here's an example of a record that's come way down in price over time. This Aurora single is really good musically. This is the band that sprung up when A to Z fell apart. And Aurora themselves fell apart very rapidly too. In fact, copies of this really never got into circulation very much back in the day because the band already had disintegrated. If you were looking at copies of this again, like during the 90s or earliest 2000s, you saw a much higher price tag for this record because it was considered very hard to find. Since eBay and the internet have become more ubiquitous, more and more copies of this have turned up to the point that folks realized, oh, it really actually wasn't as rare as we thought it was. And now you can pretty easily get it for under $50. So here's an example again. If you were just looking at prices, archived from 1999 or something, you'd think this is a steal for the record. But no, this is exactly what you should be paying for these days. Let's see. What other things have we got here? Second Venom single, kind of cool. These early ones are hard to get now. Here's one I thought went for a pretty good price. This is the first Venom 7-inch. I like both the songs on this one. Cool picture sleeve. I thought 68 was a pretty good buy on this one. I've seen this single, pushing $100 or even a little higher in recent years. Venom's very, very collectible, and these early records are hard to find, especially in good condition. Venom records are often ones that when you find them, they're pretty beat up. They're pretty used. So when you find clean copies, they will sell for a premium. So $68, nice buy on that one. Let's see. Scrolling along. Here's another one now I don't understand. I don't know why this Angel Witch 7-inch got so expensive. This is not one, to my knowledge, that should have gone anywhere up into the 3-digit territory. If there's something I'm missing about this particular copy, please leave a comment down below and fill me in. But yeah, this seemed pretty outrageous. I'm not sure why somebody paid that much for it. The Reincarnate is one of the best new wave of British heavy metal singles musically. I featured it on one of the very first episodes on my YouTube channel. $113 is a little low. This is one that's actually come down in price a little bit over the years, and it's not really that easy to find. One thing that hurts this record is it never came with a picture sleeve except for a handful of promo copies. Record collectors are a funny bunch. If a record has a picture sleeve, it does sort of add a premium to the price. But this one, again, standard issue, never came with a picture sleeve. Just a few copies that were sent out as promotional things had sort of a hastily thrown together sleeve. There are a lot of collectors of this kind of stuff, though, that will just hold out wanting one of those promo sleeved copies. And they'll see this and be like, oh, I really want that Reincarnate record, but I'm not going to buy it until it has the promo sleeve. I tell you, that is not a hill I personally would want to die on. You are going to wait a very long time to find one of those, and you better be prepared to pay a huge premium to get that sleeve. If you just, the music is what matters, right? Well, then, there's nothing wrong. This copy plays just the same as a copy that comes with the promo sleeve. It's here, it's available now, and it's a hell of a lot cheaper. So if someone really wants to hold out for that, hey, that's absolutely their business. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying sometimes you got to be realistic about these things. Holding out for these ultra rare variants that, again, the record was never meant to have a picture sleeve, really. So why are you holding out for it? And are you really willing to pay the extra several $100s more when a copy turns up? If so, good luck. I hope you win it. If you're not willing to pay all that extra money when the picture sleeve comes around, why didn't you just buy this one? Great single. There's a lesson there somewhere. I may have just rambled. Maybe I made a point. Let's see. The Mithra is worth pointing out. It's one of the few items on Guardian that doesn't sell very high. They made thousands of copies of this one. It sold really well. It was one of the records that kind of helped kickstart the new wave of British heavy metal in late 79 and early 1980. There's a few different pressings of it as well. This 7-inch on Guardian, no picture sleeve. Yeah, it's like a $25, $30 record. This Nighttime Flyer single sold for $160. Oh, excuse me. Sold for $160. I know nothing about this record. So anyone familiar with it, please leave a comment down below. Fill me in. I don't know this band and I don't know this record. This next one I do, the Overdrive EP, 7-inch, 3-track EP. Has always been very rare, very collectible. I would have guessed that, yeah, it would probably get to the $300 mark without much trouble. It almost got to the $500 mark. This one, musically, I like one of the tracks a lot better than the other two. This is one that benefits from having the picture sleeve with, all the cool, eagles and, metal looking imagery going on. So, always been a pretty high dollar item. This one, the Bitches Sin 7-inch. This one had a condition issue. There were some chips on the edge of the vinyl, and for me, that's a deal breaker. I'm not interested in buying chipped records, but somebody still paid $47 for it. Always pay attention to the condition, folks. The Aragorn Black Ice 7-inch. Here's another example of one that's gone way up over the years. In the late 90s, early 2000s, you could have gotten this record for like $8, $18. It was a very cheap item. But as it was featured on some different compilations, got more circulation, people realized that it was a really, really good single and demand went way up for it. So I'm not surprised it was pushing upwards of $90 now. It's one that a lot of people really like. It's got pretty fast-paced songs, low, rumbly sound to it. It's a lot heavier sounding than a lot of typical new wave of British heavy metal. So it appeals to a little bit of a wider fan base. Let's see, a lot of these singles like White Spirit, Kraken, skip those. The Legend single, this is not the same Legend that had the LPs I scrolled past earlier. This has always been a pretty rare and collectible single. Triarchy, this is a cool one. This is a good price on this, I think. It's a 3-track EP. The band only did 2 7-inch releases. This one isn't a real high dollar one, but I would have expected it to bring at least, $40-50, and it only brought about half that. Pretty nice purchase there, I'd say. Let's see. The Black Axe bringing 76. Wow. Didn't know that record would sell that high, but it's a very popular one, considered one of the greats from the new wave of British heavy metal movement. This band became Wolf later on and released the End of the World LP on Mausoleum. Great single. A lot of copies were made of it back in the day, but I don't know. Maybe it's gotten hard to find with the picture sleeve. Here's the 7-inch version of Heavy Metal Mania from Holocaust. Here's a couple of the other big spicy meatballs from this whole auction set. The Hollow Ground EP. I made an entire video about this one record. You can check it out on my channel. It's another one on Guardian with a picture sleeve, very much like what we saw with the Schizophrenic single earlier. The difference is this one's quite good musically. And as such, it's always been a pretty sought after item. For a long time, the price was stuck around $350 to $450. There was a period in the early 2000s where copies would go for a little under $300, and then it came back up. But yeah, seeing it push $900, it's like, wow, I've not seen that record get that high before. I would have guessed, okay, yeah, 450. Maybe it's a little over 500 by this point, but I would not have guessed that it would be pushing $900. Great record, but I don't know. Maybe somebody was trying to collect a lot of these rare Guardian label items, and this was a chance to get some of the really tough ones. Who knows? High Treason. This is another very rare and collectible one. Not surprised to see it sell for this much. This is one with, as long as it has the original picture sleeve, yes, that's a good buy. Some of these black and white picture sleeves, you do have to watch out for people having photocopied picture sleeves, and sometimes that's hard to tell from photos. I looked at this one real close, and it does look like it's the original sleeve. I didn't see anything in these auctions that made me think anything was photocopied. Good single, always been a rare, pretty obscure one, and yeah, you've always had to pay a couple $100 for that record. 200 for this Hellenbach. It's one of those bands, they appear on some compilations here. I've never really clicked with them, so I had no idea this would sell for that much. Here's a rare 7-inch on Roadrunner Records, not a label you associate with the 7-inch format. I just bookmarked it because I'd never seen it before, and it brought $122 or 127. Cool. Dawnwatcher, always been kind of popular, little on the proggy side of new wave of British heavy metal. I think this was a pretty good buy. This one with the picture sleeve usually goes a little higher than that, although it's not the hardest one to track down. Speaking of things that are hard to track down, let's talk Satan. There's another one on that Guardian record label with a picture sleeve. This is one, they're really not hyping this when they say this is one of those grail items, because it really is. It's always been a very high dollar record. Even on like the very first mail order lists I looked at back in the early 90s, this was over $100. And I think it was like over $200 on some of those first lists. So it's always been a high dollar item. For a very long time, it stayed in that $200 to $300 range. Well, this copy did not stay in that range, not even close. If you'd asked me to guess, I would have said this record could have pushed $500. I was very, very wrong. Why did this copy sell for so much extra? It's a band that's very collectible, label's very collectible. This is a band that has come back together, released some more albums in recent years, and a lot of fans have really loved those albums. So that's, again, brought more visibility to these old Satan items, like the demo tape we saw at the start of the auction list. Yeah, this copy has a promo picture with it. That is not something that originally came with the record. These kind of add-ins, sometimes people will pay a premium for that kind of stuff, but yeah, again, if we're thinking this is like a $500 record, did somebody really pay 500 extra bucks to get the picture? I don't think so. You got to want that record awfully bad to pay $1,000 for it. Oh, you got Persian Risk up to 79. This is another one that used to be like an $8 record, but great band. The connections there with Motorhead through the guitar slot. Dragster, here's one of those early heavy metal singles with the crazy characters and the Maiden England stamp. A little surprised this one didn't go higher. This has always been a collectible one and hard to find with the picture sleeve. I would have guessed this one went just, I thought it would get over 50. So I think someone got a pretty good buy there. Let's see. We'll wrap this up pretty soon. Firebird, over $100. This one doesn't have its picture sleeve with it. Somebody still paid $100 for it. The picture sleeve is very hard to find for this record. It's not the best new wave of British heavy metal single. It's not bad. I kind of like it, but it is a little bit on the primitive side. But yeah, tough to find with the picture sleeve. Bashful Alley. This is the variation with the yellow sleeve on LEJ records. LEJ, another very collectible label for new wave of British heavy metal. I think this was the only LEJ item in the whole lot, and it's the easiest to find LEJ record. The others are much harder. And yeah, usually I think of this as more like a $40 to $50 record. It's a great record. This is the first pressing of it. There's a second pressing done like a year later with a tan picture sleeve, and there's a few LEJ copies with a white picture sleeve. All three sleeves have the same image. The white one's the really rare one. I talked to a band member about it years ago. They simply ran out of yellow paper at the copy shop. So like, okay, do the last 10 or 20 in white paper. We don't care. Never thought anything about it. And yeah, I've seen exactly one, maybe two of those white cover copies ever. Deathwings, one of the only Swedish items that was in the lot by Behemoth. The red cover is the second pressing. First pressing is black. This one had a letter from the band, another just random add-in, not something that came with it originally. $50, a fair price, even though it's the second press. Not bad, not a bad buy there at all. This Witchfinder, $11 seems like, wow, that's not very expensive. Very poor condition. So again, always check the condition on things. Savage, $30, exactly right. These singles on like the Ebony label, can't really get them for much less than $30 anymore. Let's see. Here's another one in Ebony. Same exact price, $31. Yep, that's what you want to be paying for them. What else have we got? Trespass, great band, great singles. Their singles have never been expensive or hard to find. They must have printed thousands of those things. They're always around. I'm not very familiar with this Soldier. There's a single, so can't really comment on why that one's expensive. These Sparta singles have always been collectible, so yeah, that price seems about right for them probably. Let's see. This Boulevard at 57 is about right. Did have a condition issue. This was one that had some chips damage. Wouldn't have bought it myself. Here you've got the first Crucifixion single, $248. Great single, never came in a picture sleeve. Has always been a pretty rare, kind of mid-tier collectible one. But it's gone up a lot over the years. Here we've got a heavy hitter. The first Witchfinder General release. Their 7-inch on the heavy metal label. pushed right up to $600. I would have guessed, I knew it would get to 300. How much more? I didn't know. Well, there's been kind of a pattern. Whatever number I thought they would get to, they kind of doubled. Um, Witchfinder General, of course, very popular, very collectible band, and that's yikes. That's a lot. Speaking of a lot, here's the Crucifixion single on Neat Records. And again, old man yelling at clouds. I remember when this single was like $8. You could buy it from heavy metal dealers and vinyl catalogs for $8, and most people didn't buy it. But it's a killer band. It's nice to see in a way that, yeah, their records are finally worth something. It also kind of sucks for people who haven't had a chance to get it yet, that now they're selling for this much. But it is a killer band. Let's see. Demon Pack's always been a collectible one. It's gone up a little bit over time. Now, here's one I cannot make heads or tails of. This Goldsmith single is not rare, and it's not good. The band did some good tracks on compilations, but this particular single, the songs, in my opinion, are very dull. Uh, it's never been a hard record to find. I see it listed on eBay all the time for like $30 to $40, and nobody ever buys it. So did somebody really push the bid up to $212 just to get the pictures of the band members, which were not something that originally came with the record anyway? Maybe. You got to really want those pictures to pay that much for them. I don't know what to say about that one. The Blitzkrieg single. This is one of the legendary newer British heavy metal records everybody knows about. $380, not cheap. But yeah, I mean, it's considered one of the absolute gems of the entire era, made famous thanks to, Metallica and such. All right, and then at the bottom of the stack, we have one of the first two Jaguar singles, Axe Crazy. A lot of folks think it's their best work. For a long time, both those Jaguar singles were $40 records, day after day after day. Now they're a lot more than that. I think they had a copy of the other Jaguar single in the auction, but it did not have its picture sleeve with it, and I didn't actually bookmark it. So there you go. Kind of a whirlwind tour of what we saw happen with those auctions. I hope folks got a little something out of that. And again, if nothing else, maybe it will help you remember when you're looking up prices online. You got to be very careful. It's very easy to start thinking, oh, this Jaguar single is worth $167. The next time that it gets auctioned, it might only bring $90, or it might get over $200. It's really hard to say when you've got such a small sample size and when these records come up very infrequently. You got to check the condition. You got to think about where is it being sold, who's selling it, what are the shipping rates. All those things factor in. Is it a reputable seller? What's going on? Look at something besides just the final price when you're trying to sort out what should a record be worth. And again, at the end of the day, it's worth whatever you're willing to pay for it. If you're not willing to pay that for it, okay, it's not worth that much to you. If you're thinking about buying some of this kind of stuff, always sit down and figure out for yourself, what are you comfortable paying for the record? What can you afford to pay for the record? If you think this is a $100 record, then do not bid more than $100 for it. As long as you follow those kind of simple guidelines, you'll never get stuck with buyer's remorse, and you'll enjoy your collection a lot more. All right, now let's talk metal in the comments down below. Yeah, if you have information on some of those items I pointed out that I'm unfamiliar with, I'd love to hear about them. If you think I'm just dead wrong in my assessment on one of these, and like, you fool, the Satan single has been selling for over $1,000 for 3 or 4 years now. Where have you been? Well, let me know. Again, like I said, I haven't tracked these as closely over the past 5 to 10 years as I used to. I may be just a bit out of date with the prices in my head. So help me get caught up on that as well. Okay, thank you for sticking in there on this video. Let's call it a night. Everybody take care, and until next time, keep banging your head, especially to new wave of British heavy metal.